This morning in my time with God, something happened that I call an aha moment. I'm not the only one who calls it that, but it's one of those moments that it seems like, aha, I get something that I've never noticed before. And it was in the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, that I often use to assess what God's doing in my life or someone else's life. And I've been looking at the 8th Beatitude, the last one, that talks about how we are to rejoice in persecution. And Jesus elaborates on that. And he says if people lie about us, if they slander us, if they revile us, if they go around ruining our reputation in persecution, we are to rejoice. As I was looking at that, I went back to how this all started, because the focus doesn't begin with us. So whenever we hear the word, it's not beginning with us. We're the recipients of it. It's already coming to us from God. So when I read how this whole encounter began, it says that Jesus saw the crowd. He saw the people who were gathered there. And then I realized that is one of the reasons for persecution. That is one of the reasons that it seems to be church people who are the ones who go around reviling and persecuting and saying all kinds of evil things against us. And Jesus is saying it's on account of him. So when I realized that this whole thing began with what Jesus saw in the people, not what the people saw in him, I realized that there's two things Jesus always saw. One, he always saw the condition of the people. He knew people's hearts all the time. He always knew the soul condition of the people he was addressing. And the other thing he always saw was whatever the Father was doing. When I think of the people who have been most upset about the gospel, most upset about learning to observe everything Jesus has commanded, they don't like what Jesus sees. They don't like that Jesus sees their soul condition, where he can actually put his finger precisely on what's going on with us. And they don't like it that Jesus sees what the Father's doing. Why? Why do people almost instinctively recoil from the thought that Jesus sees our soul condition and he sees what the Father is doing in us? Do you see the accountability there is in that? If Jesus sees our soul condition, that means he's going to address it his way, not the way our self-protection has tried to do things. And if he sees what the Father's doing in us, which will always be about that soul condition, he's going to go right there. He's going to go right there and work on what the Father's doing. Many of us struggle with this because we have established a self-protection to even protect ourselves from seeing our soul condition, because there's guilt in there, there's shame in there, and there's fear in there. And many church people have never come to the cross. I'm not saying they're not saved, but they've never actively, consciously come to the cross to resolve the guilt they feel inside them, to resolve the shame they feel inside them, and to resolve the fear they feel inside them. And they are surviving life by surrounding all of that with self-protection. And then Jesus comes along and sees that. And they want to get to know Jesus, but every time they get to know him a bit more, they realize he sees. He sees what's in there. And you discover that Jesus is always looking in people to see what the Father is doing. So what is the Father doing about someone's soul condition? That's exactly where we will find Jesus working. And that means, as we consider whether we are the poor in spirit, whether we are those who mourn, whether we are the meek who give up trying to fix ourselves, trying to take care of ourselves, and we hunger and thirst for the righteousness of faith. And if we experience Jesus like that, we become these merciful people with pure hearts, who become peacemakers, who want other people to have peace with God. And that brings us to the place where we get persecuted because we see what Jesus sees, and we see what our Father is doing, and we want to join our Father in each other's lives where we see him working. And unfortunately, that means that some church people aren't going to like it. They don't want to know what Jesus sees. They don't want to know what God's doing because they don't want to change. They want to maintain control. I'm sharing this because for me it was a huge comfort in explaining why so many people revile, respond with persecution, respond with lying, slander. Well, it's because Jesus was seeing something in them they didn't want to see. And Jesus was joining his Father in a work they didn't want the Father to do. The question is, what about you? When you hear the Word of God, do you like that Jesus sees how you are doing, and he recognizes the work the Father's doing about that, and in his love for you, he will join the Father there, because they have come to heal the brokenhearted and to bind up our wounds. And you and I are blessed when we feel the poverty of spirit, and we mourn what's wrong with us, and we meekly agree with God, I can't fix this, I can't make myself better. And so we let ourselves hunger and thirst for the righteousness of meeting God inside ourselves with what they see and with what they are doing. And that brings us into this satisfaction of righteousness that is by faith. And it makes us want to be merciful to other people. And it makes us want to have a pure heart, where all we want is for the righteous to live by faith. And that makes us peacemakers who want people to have peace with God. Not this pretend stuff, not the self-protective stuff. You've got to let Jesus show you what he sees. You've got to let Jesus show you what the Father's doing, so you can take his yoke upon you and learn from him, so he can give rest to your souls. He can bring you to have peace with God. And Jesus makes us so well that we're willing to be persecuted to make Jesus known to people. There's such a blessing in that. I'm on this journey right now of God healing things, comforting me in things, and encouraging me in things, and calling me to rejoice in the persecutions of life, because he sees, and he's joining his Father in whatever he's doing.